Welcome to the 2020 Bedtime Stories fundraising event. Cheers, everyone. I hope that you're having a great evening so far, and I want to thank you for joining us for the night shift. My name is Monica Cortez Vajaro, and I have the pleasure of guiding us through this evening's programming. So let me offer a little background for those tuning in to their first bedtime stories. And welcome to all of you who have never been here before and those of you who are bedtime story veterans. Humanities Washington has hosted this annual fundraiser for more than 20 years. We typically gather together in a ballroom and hear original works from Northwest authors as we enjoy a meal together. Well, the coronavirus has certainly turned all of our standard activities upside down this year. So we've jumped into the virtual world for Bedtime Stories 2020. But there is a silver lining. This year, we are reaching a larger audience from across the country. So we are so thrilled to have all of you with us tonight. Here's what you can expect. In true Bedtime Stories fashion, two Pacific Northwest authors have written original stories using the event's night shift theme as their inspiration. We will hear from a diverse group of student authors who were invited to write about a time they felt unheard. Humanities Washington CEO Julie Ziegler will also share an organization update. And most importantly, we'll have an opportunity to support Humanities Washington. Since we are not in person, please consider donating what you might have spent on an outfit, parking, dinner, or even at the bar. Our society has become increasingly divided, distracted by work and technology, less engaged in civic life, and unfortunately less willing to listen to others' opinions. Humanities Washington brings people together to explore and consider what it means to be human, and to reflect on our shared past, present, and future. Tonight, our goal is to raise $120,000 in support of important programs that promote dialogue. How can you support Humanities Washington? Tonight, you'll have an opportunity to make a donation that directly supports our work. We also have a nightstand package available for purchase. The package includes 3 books by Northwest authors and one from each of the Bedtime Stories authors, plus a special surprise book. Information to make a donation and purchase the nightstand package is on your screen. So you can text the word humanities to 41444. You can go directly to our webpage, humanities.org/bedtime stories 2020, or give us a call at 206-682-1770. Before we introduce our first author, let's take a minute to recognize our generous Bedtime Stories sponsors. We see them listed here on the screen, and so we want to thank them for their generosity. Your continued commitment to Humanities Washington and to Bedtime Stories is greatly appreciated. We'd also like to thank our board. The names of our dedicated leaders are on the screen. We appreciate their thoughtful guidance during this difficult time. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing our first author, Beth Piatote. Beth hails from Nespelem in the Okanagan County of Washington and has published scholarly work as well as poems, personal essays, and fiction, and is dedicated to Indigenous language revitalization. She is Nez Perce and works with her heritage language, Nez Perce. She is an associate professor of comparative literature and Native American studies at my alma mater, University of California, Berkeley. Published in 2019, her acclaimed mixed genre collection of stories, The Beadworkers, explores the inventive and unforgettable pattern of Native American life in the contemporary world. The bedtime story she will read to us tonight is entitled The Night Walk. Take it away, Beth.
Hello, I'm delighted to join you for Bedtime Stories. The story I've written for you is called The Night Walk. I was inspired by the theme of the night shift, and I was curious about what kinds of work we do at night. The Night Walk. After his disappointingly chaste dream about Brad Pitt, Rowan realized he had to up his sleep game. During the pandemic, his friends had been extravagantly gifted with dreams, describing nocturnal hours filled with adventure, romance, and fabulous sex. In his dream, Rowan had been on a movie set with Brad Pitt, and when Brad embraced him off camera, Rowan had rebuffed his advances, saying, "No, Brad, I respect you as a person." In the dream, Rowan had earnestly desired Brad Pitt to feel loved for who he was, a whole person with insecurities and disappointments, and not just a gorgeous movie star ready to hook up. But the next day, Rowan cursed his subconscious. "Idiot," he muttered, as the words, "No, Brad," jolted around his head like bumper cars. What were you thinking? Who curves Brad Pitt? Rowan worried not only that his sexual appetite had malfunctioned, but that he was in the middle of an entire systemic breakdown. Rowan turned to his friend, Ted, for advice. "It was a one-off," Ted said. "I'm sure you have it in you to mac with Brad Pitt. And besides, Brad Pitt isn't for everyone." In truth, Rowan wasn't sure that he had it in him. He was 2 years past the divorce, with only minor flirtations and occasional Hueys to patch him through. And he wasn't as young as he used to be. The Brad Pitt dream was nearly age-appropriate. This was yet another disappointment. During the pandemic, Rowan's primary companions had been houseplants and despair. He lived alone and without the usual fodder of the gym, parties, and the office to support his social metabolism. He felt bereft. Now the weekly staff meeting appeared as a delightful mirage of human connection. He longed to make photocopies or stand in line for coffee. Some days he went to bed and woke up with the exact same thought. I will sleep alone for eternity. Rowan had accepted the fact that there wasn't much he could do to control daily life, but he was not ready to admit that he could not control, or at least influence, his dreams. He needed to live the life he was missing, if not by day, then by night. He had grown up hearing stories of old-time Indian men, his great uncle among them, who could change the weather. Dreams seemed a modest reach compared to a lightning storm. Ted said Rowan needed to make friends with his subconscious, and that meant no more dream shaming. With proper appreciation, perhaps Rowan could persuade his mind to reassemble the pixels of the Brad Pitt dream and give him another go. This seemed a bit high level to start, so Rowan began with the mundane, sleeping on the other side of the bed. He moved the nightstand to the unused side and placed a blooming orchid next to the lamp. That night, he took a warm bath and slipped into his favorite boxers, then glided through some gentle stretches. His body felt alive and open and ready for a fabulous date with his own imagination. He lay down in a kingly pose, palms face upward. "Come at me, universe," he said, and soon entered a deep golden slumber. 2 hours later, he jolted upright. Too hot. Where was he? He kicked off the blanket. He turned to his side. He went to the bathroom. He paced. He ate a bowl of cornflakes. He did a crossword puzzle. He watched a rerun of the Andy Griffith Show. He looked at the clock. It was 1:32. He folded himself into fetal position. He begged for sleep. All night, he battled to reclaim the left side of the bed, the side that had been left. The next morning, he swore at the mirror. Was there a sleep deprivation equivalent of hangry, slangry, slurious? "You can't fight your animal nature," Ted said, and urged Rowan to double down. "Get outside, pee on something, go foraging." Rowan struck out by foot that afternoon, headed northeast, away from his regular routes. Not exactly the wild, but the best he could do. As he walked, the street and yards became novel, each one a possible source of treasure. He stopped at a blue house with blackberry bushes sprawling over the fence. Rowan tested one, then plucked a handful. "You making a pie?" Rowan stepped back and looked for the voice. It came from the balcony. A handsome man, middle-aged, sat at a cafe table with a book and a can of no-lie IPA beside him. No, Rowan said, just snacking. Ah, curse the bad luck, the man said. You've got a lot then? The man smiled. You're familiar with the iceberg theory? Rowan smiled too, imagining a vast tangle of berry vines on the other side of the fence. The ones on the alley side are riper, the man said. Help yourself. Thanks, Rowan replied. And come back when you want to make a pie, he said. Rowan smiled and nodded, then made his way down the alley. Foraging had become unexpectedly pleasant. Soon he had filled the bag and glanced back at the balcony. The man was reading. Thanks, Rowan called out, and the man looked up and waved. Rowan cut across the park on his way home. The lawn was dotted with families and couples lounging on blankets and college students playing badminton. How normal everything seemed, Rowan thought, and just then a doe darted out from a thicket and ran. Rowan froze. More alarming than the sudden eruption of movement was the fact that no one in the park seemed to see her. The couples continued to gaze at their phones and each other. The families ate their sandwiches, and the shuttlecock floated over the net. Did you see that? He called out to a couple near the path. That deer? The pair looked up, then around the park. They shook their heads. Rowan followed the doe, crossing the park and turning down a side street. There he came upon a plum tree with branches laden with fruit. The purple orbs released easily into his palm, and he picked 5 to carry home. That night, Rowan dreamed of the blue house and the tall fence around it. He was walking along the fence, and the man in the balcony was on the other side. He could feel the man's presence, a delicious tension between them. But the fence, the briar of thorns. He was certain that if he followed the fence, he would come to a gate. A pink sky saturated the scene with a rosy glow, and Rowan's heart bloomed. Finally, he came to an opening and crawled under the thorns, but when he arrived at the other side, the house was gone, and so was the man. The pink sky remained, and a land of tawny hillsides opened before him. Obviously, something inside of you has died, Ted said the next day. Wait, what? You're dreaming about a fence, a briar, and a desert, he said. Try to be more open. Rowan objected, but Ted's interpretation stuck. Later that day, Rowan walked to the park and sat on a bench, hoping that the deer would reappear. Instead, a man approached him. The man's clothes were clean but rumpled, and he carried a dingy rucksack. The man walked directly to Rowan, who had never felt so trapped in the wide open. Can you help me? The man asked. Rowan reached for his wallet. No, the man said. Can you help me write a letter? Maybe, Rowan said. Ted's words flitted across his brain. It's for my girlfriend, he said. The man sat down and unzipped his bag, extracting a notebook and a card with metallic stars and planets on it. Can you write on this? Rowan looked at the card. I can't write, the man said. But you have a notebook there, Rowan said, and I'm sure your girlfriend would rather see your writing than mine. The man began to repack. No, I always do it this way, he said. She knows it's my words. The words, be more open, floated across the sky. Wait, he said. I'll do it. Rowan took the card. The man opened his notebook, which was filled with letters and symbols. Dear Maura, he said, I have traveled through time and galaxies to be with you. I came to Earth to become a dinosaur, and then a human. I didn't want you to leave, but once you decided, I couldn't stop you. I ran after you, but you were gone. I had to come to Earth to find you and remind you of your power. Rowan penned each word as elegantly as he could. The man smiled, satisfied. It's true, you know, the man said. She was right beside me. Then I turned and she was gone. The dinosaur time was rough. Thanks for your help. Rowan was certain that the man was homeless, and he was certain that what the man said was true, though he didn't know how. That night, Rowan dreamed he was on a tropical island. He was visiting friends who lived in a cluster of houses beside the ocean, and each house had a canoe. Around him, children were playing and women were cooking and gossiping. The air was thick and held a charge of anticipation. A rainstorm was on its way. Rowan felt, in every way, his boy self, with skinny legs and cut-off shorts and excitement to play with the other boys. Then he noticed that rather than running, the boys were flying, like little flying saucers. Rowan discovered that he, too, had this ability. He sat cross-legged and, using his arms as levers, lifted off the ground and cruised smoothly around. He delighted in the discovery of his new power, and he felt pure happiness as he flew about with the other boys, chasing each other through groves of palm trees, dodging houses and dogs, and knowing they were free to play until they were called for dinner. That dream seemed to restore something in him, perhaps some optimism that had been stripped away by the divorce, the pandemic, or belly flab. He channeled this energy into a massive purge of housewares. By nature, Rowan was tidy, but after having experienced the smooth pleasure of self-propelled flight, he longed to be unburdened by things, especially things that reminded him of his previous life. The casserole dish, the wine glasses, the birthday watch, the half set of bath towels. All day he went room to room, plucking items off shelves and emptying drawers. He made 4 trips to Goodwill and 1 to the dump. On his final return, feeling sweaty and satisfied, he stopped halfway up the walk. A package was waiting on the porch. Cruel joke, this was the Hydra's head. But it wasn't. Turning the package over, Rowan recognized the handwriting. He opened it and read the card. "Hey, Neff. Went to the mountains with Rosie and your cousin Eugene. Got 9 buckets of hucks. Gathered some pisco medicine for you. Love, Unc. P.S. Rosie wants to know what's good on Netflix." Rowan unwrapped the package. 2 bags, one filled with dried Indian tea and the other with dried huckleberries, plus a vacuum-sealed package of smoked salmon. For a long moment, he held the open package in both hands, thinking about his family. That night, Rowan brewed a cup of Indian tea. He held the tea to his chin, inhaling the grassy smell. That night he dreamed of walking along the Columbia River, the water shimmering in late afternoon sun. His skin warmed in the light, and he became aware of an older man walking beside him. On the other side of the river, bluffs rose up from water's edge. He could smell the bright scent of fish in the water and hear the grasses shuffle and shoo in the wind. And before him, he saw the shadow of a great bird in flight and looked up to see an eagle the size of a plane crossing over him. The path before him changed, and he found himself walking through sage-covered hills, pungent and alive after rain. The sky turned a fantastic color of pink. He felt a doe walking beside him. He turned to look, and she leapt into the sky and flew away. The sky faded to a deep blue, and as stars began to appear, he found himself walking among them, not flying, but walking through the sky with Grizzly Bear and the wolves and the North Star, and there he felt most serene as he walked along, greeting each one as an old friend. Thank you. I hope your dreams tonight take you exactly where you need to go. Good night.
Oh, that is a great writer. The way she was able to take our quotidian pandemic experience and turn it into so many poetic moments is brilliant. I too have taken many trips to the Goodwill during this time, but she made them sound quite lovely. Thank you so much, Beth. That was just beautiful. Um, I'd like to share now a little bit about my connection to Humanities Washington. I moved to Washington about 6 years ago from California, Northern California, near the San Francisco Bay Area. And when I came here, I came to pursue a PhD, but I realized I kind of loved this place and I didn't want to leave. And then I found out that there was an organization promoting the humanities. As a theater scholar, as someone who teaches public speaking, and as an actor, I know the power of the humanities, and it was so impressive to meet another organization that was actually doing this amazing work of sharing the power of the humanities all across our state. So I applied to be part of the Speakers Bureau, and I was honored to be accepted. And it has been a true blessing to do this work and to travel the state and meet so many people who are moved by human connection, by story, and by dialogue. So I am so happy that I could be here with you tonight. Now, I would like to welcome Julie Ziegler, CEO of Humanities Washington, to share an update. Julie has led the organization since 2009 and served several terms on the Board of Trustees before taking on her current role.
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us in our first ever virtual Bedtime Stories event. We are a small nonprofit with a big mission, a mission that in 2020 feels more and more challenging to fulfill, yet profoundly important. Humanities Washington opens minds and bridges divides by creating spaces to explore different perspectives. In effect, to embrace each other's humanity. I'm standing in the Holocaust Center for Humanity in Seattle, a place that reminds us of what happens when we stop seeing each other as human beings, when labels such as good, bad, pure, impure, deserving, undeserving override basic compassion and empathy. In this year of a global pandemic, police violence and protest, and what both sides see as the most important election in our lifetime, losing sight of each other's humanity could have disastrous consequences. Humanities Washington doesn't have the power to change all that's wrong with the world, but the roots of so many of our troubles lie in forgetting our shared human experiences, vulnerabilities, questions, and passions. Humanities Washington deeply impacts Washington communities by creating spaces for people to come together and explore what it means to be human, and to reflect on our shared past and present, and lay the groundwork for a better future. Each year, we hold hundreds of events and programs led by cultural experts, scholars, and storytellers who discuss everything from Washington state history to social issues of the moment. The evidence is clear that there's an incredible hunger for the sense of connection we provide. Last year, we held more Speakers Bureau events than at any time in our history, 419, reaching all 39 counties in Washington state. Our Primetime Family Reading Program, in which children and families discuss the deeper themes in children's literature, grew by 18% from the year before. We held the largest Think and Drink event in our history. 200 people showed up to discuss the impact of technology on our happiness and well-being. Because of popular demand, we expanded our Heritage Arts Apprenticeship Program. Poet Laureate Claudio Castor Luna launched One River, Many Voices, a series of readings and events along the Columbia River. And while we're proud of that work, those in-person programs and events feel like a lifetime ago. We've always loved and emphasized the importance of in-person events in which communities can see each other's humanity up close, when we can hear the quaver in someone's voice or see the excitement in their eyes. It's no secret the online space where we're spending more and more of our lives can be dehumanizing. But then in March, as COVID-19 and the lockdown began, we knew we had to embrace what technology offered, and quickly. Within weeks, we launched a series called Cabin Fever Questions via email and social media, where we posed questions rooted in the philosophy, current events, and humanities that people could discuss with others in quarantine. An accompanying series for kids, Cabin Fever Kids, was launched shortly after that. It was the most successful event we've ever done online. We also held online conversations about the Black Lives Matter protests, hip hop, and the sociology of home objects. And this fall, we'll hold more live online conversations in a series called What These Times Mean, Navigating 2020. But perhaps our most important accomplishment this year was helping our state's cultural sector, which has been badly hurt by the economic effects of COVID-19. Thanks to the CARES Act, passed by the federal government, we were tasked by the National Endowment for the Humanities to provide emergency grants to our state's museums, historical societies, and cultural centers. Seizing on the urgency of the moment, we were among the first humanities councils in the country to give out these grants, providing badly needed relief to those organizations who were facing the prospect of months of empty seats and vacant galleries. And we distributed these funds through an equity lens. Nearly half of all recipients were BIPOC-led or were in rural areas. In fact, one of our CARES Act relief grant recipients was the place where I'm standing. The Holocaust Center for Humanity not only shows us the brutality that humans are capable of, but our incredible ability to rise above it. Local Holocaust survivor Steve Adler said of the center, "I believe very strongly that this is the most hopeful place in the city." This place is proof the humanities not only help us preserve our acts of kindness, bravery, and sacrifice, they help us bond through them. While this year has been one of uncertainty and isolation, it provides some opportunities for us to come together. We typically hold this fundraiser twice each fall, once in Seattle and once in Spokane, with different authors and speakers. Though we're missing the lively spirit of in-person events, necessity allows us for the first time to bring our state together, the East Side and the West Side, for a shared literary experience. Thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for your loyal support that allows Humanities Washington to serve all corners of our great state.
Thank you, Julie. The work of Humanities Washington is especially important right now. And I want to praise Humanities Washington, give them a round of applause, because as a speaker in the Speakers Bureau, I know that they did not blink. As soon as they found out that we were going to be all at home and that our libraries that had been such a vital part of this programming wanted to do online events, they set those online events up. And I did an online event at a local library that had over 40 people, when usually it would only have 10, because people came in from all over the country. And that's the kind of innovation, the kind of determination that Humanities Washington has. And I'm really proud to be part of this organization. They also decided early on that bedtime stories would be online so that everyone could feel safe and comfortable. So we thank you so much for being here. Tonight, we want to include a segment to help us reflect on different perspectives. As our society works through and addresses racial and cultural division, to do this, we reached out to student authors who don't have a large platform, but whose stories speak volumes about our current moment. They opened up to share experiences of loss, the effect of suicide, and racial prejudice.
My name is Champagne. I go to Central Washington University, and this is And We Sang Hallelujah. And we sang Hallelujah. October 7th, 2018, I walk a hallway, and it felt biblical. I arrive at the hospital of my hometown, and I'm sitting in room 413. I'm greeted with the sight of my father. Once a man strong enough to move mountains out of his way, now being kept alive with a series of machines and beeps. I don't cry. I do what I've done the last 3 years and swallow the rising emotion in order to have the last conversation that I will with my father. The conversation I have is one-sided. I am assured that he can hear me. I don't believe them. I am then greeted with a happy face in place that smells damp with tears, thick with inevitable decisions. Nurse Joy tells me she's been taking care of him, grabs my arm with tenderness, as if she could feel my brokenness. I fear death. I fear evil. I am walked into a family waiting room that resembles the streets at night. I wait. The room slowly becomes full. A somber occasion turned family reunion. See, a family reunion turned congregation. All my family meeting each other. And to me, it feels like the first time. My Uncle Mike Clark arguing with my Uncle Funk, talking about who has the better mixes of which classic mixtape. Look, my Uncle Hotling, who turned pastor, is now having a conversation with my pastor, Sean Fletcher, and my best friend, Harkar. All business. This would be the first time that I've ever seen that man cry. Once composed, he's accepted into our congregation with open arms. But my Aunt Kim, my Aunt Kelly, Aunt Cassie, them checking on my mother. My sister is comforted by her friends, and at that moment, the sun is shifted through a tear-stained window. Together, we turn a room haunted with shadows and death into a church choir. Look, we rejoice with stories of my father. My father be the pastor of this congregation, but not a word left his lips. But all of his words were recited by our congregation. You see, we sang his testimonies, and we sang songs of his return. My father be so stubborn, never accepting of anything. As my auntie rubs him in holy oil, she prays to whatever God she believes in. I pray to whatever God she believes in. We pray to whatever God who will listen, just to please pull him back from this other side. See, the doctor comes in and interrupts our church choir, our congregation, just to give a grim status no one wanted to hear, but has always been written on the walls. As the congregation fell silent, my voice rose to ask a question on everybody's lips. The doctor told us less than 50%. And the choir erupted in symphony because my father be a gambling man. See, my father shot dice on the stoop of a church, and you think my father hasn't overcome greater odds or wrong. My father, a gambling man. My father always overcame the odds, and this church was erected in his honor. As we sang songs about his triumph, and my father will be the first mortal to ever conquer death. And my mother ever be so strong, built so strong, she built me even stronger. I give her a hug in these arms that she built, and she let loose from her lips that hallelujah. Long into the night, the odds became ever so high, too high to overcome. So we locked arms and marched through the valley, singing at the top of our lungs songs in my father's honor, so rejoicing in his testimony. And we marched with a purpose to spread my father's glory. We marched to the local bowling alley, right next to the hospital. Continuing our church sermon, we stormed into that bowling alley with the same fire as the Lord's holy blade. We marched in as if it was the temple of God, and we flipped tables like Jesus, casting out the false prophets. We casted out those non-believers, and my father has ascended. My father, he has ascended. We sang hallelujah. We silenced the explosions of those bowling pins and ordered the entire menu, and daring the devil to crash this last supper of ours, denying my father of that rest, that eternal rest that he so deserved. For his eternal rest would be far from peaceful, for we made sure my father's revival was expected. And I know my father pulled up to them gates with us as that vehicle, our songs as his sound system. We drowned out Daniel's horn, and we made sure Peter welcomed my father with the same love we used to send him there. Thank you.
He Might Still Make It by Kerry Ayakodak. I said, he might still make it, but I could see she couldn't hear me. It had been 2 weeks. She needed to be here in Anchorage to make cremation plans, to get the death certificate, to claim the body. Dad wanted to go home to Nome, to bring their granddaughter home, my 3-year-old niece whom they are raising. They had been in Anchorage since the day after my uncle shot himself, tried to commit suicide in the home he was raised in, broke down the locked door to the room where his brother kept a hunting rifle. A cousin living next door heard the shot and found him, Umiak. When he was a young man and I was a child, he and 2 cousins hunted and killed 2 polar bears. We gathered in the old King Island Hall, and he danced the polar bear dance. I will remember his face that night always, burning with pride as he danced. Umiak, the powerful and graceful dancer. Umiak, the trickster. Umiak, before the rough waters of despair. Crushed by what? What do you call the cataclysm? Is there a name for it? The sudden shearing, the dislocation of our tribe from our home island of Weevuk, King Island, from a world where hunting, gathering, and dancing gave individuals respect and standing in their community. When the federal government closed the BIA school on the island, forcing my grandparents to relocate to Nome with their young children, he joined a new American world that had no use for indigenous values. Hunting was a sport. Gathering was a hobby. Dancing was entertainment. In this world, the path to respect ran through money, but money requires a good education, which America would not provide. In the hospital, we waited for news of the surgeries, a lung removed, his heart repaired, a colostomy bag inserted, a tracheotomy. We went to visit him while he was in a coma. Whether he could hear us or not, we spoke to him, told him that we loved him. Our elder relatives reassured us from the rippling edges of past epidemics with stories of other relatives who survived tuberculosis with only 1 lung. How strong they remained. He might still make it. My mom couldn't hear it. Anchorage is a place we fly to from Nome to die in deep distress. But Umiak survived. He started to heal. He woke up. He heard us say we loved him. He started to joke. He mimed that he wished he could smoke through his tracheostomy and made us laugh. He got cranky. He grew tired of the hospital. He began to live again. And one day, 2 months after he shot himself, after many surgeries and painful recovery, he died suddenly of an aneurysm. A blood clot had traveled to his brain. This is a story I don't like to tell because it is sharp as I handle it 3 years later. How many people do you know who have killed themselves or tried to? I know 8. I am an Alaska Native woman. I grew up in rural Alaska. My friends, my cousins, my uncle, several of my brother's friends, some closer, have self-harmed or died of self-injury. Each instance of self-harm is sharp, a harm to the individual and a harm to the community, a reflection of the cataclysm and the cataclysm at once. My uncle was recovering when he died. The road back from that moment of despair was not easy, and it was painful, but he was coming back to us. This story, too, should go out from us. Go out and return to us. Make its way to you if your ears will hear it. You have work to do to help us repair the cataclysm. We are doing our best from our side. We are waiting in the waiting room so many times, too many times, our stories unheard. Give every child, every Native child, a chance as I have had for a good education, for a way through the cataclysm. This life is still painful to watch my children not grow up on the land as I did, picking greens with their grandparents, watching and listening to the sandhill crane fly south in autumn, picking berries, watching the horizon, always for bears. But my education, writing creative nonfiction, and learning languages in college, refining my craft as a poet in graduate school, This has been a handrail around the darkest places, an opportunity to find other ways of being that still hold that glow, that fierce glow on Umiak's face the night of his polar bear dance.
My name is Daryl Foto. I go to Central Washington University, and this is to be African in America. On days like this, when the flag over my bed won't save me from identity crisis, when my mother's cooking becomes the only heritage I know, when sorrow overwhelms me, yet I don't ask my ancestors for guidance, for we learn grief in different languages. These are the days I find myself transcribing ancestry into poetry, in hopes of closing a generation gap, though how could I? When all my poems are written in English, the same language my father's accent haunts. I guess his tongue never wanted to become a tool for assimilation, never wanted to forget where it came from, which explains why, on days like this, his words become rebellion. Conversations become battles waged behind the smile of an immigrant, a final attempt to safeguard the country he holds in his mouth, though what good is winning a battle when he lost this war the second he got high off this promised land's illusion? So now, his tears form the ocean that separates me from my roots, which is not to say I don't know where I come from. It's just to say that most days, my feet forget how to get me there, though. How do I claim soil I wasn't born on, but my grandfather loved enough to die in? And is that not what it means to be African in America? To be a seed planted in foreign soil, blooming into a flower that looks nothing like the land it hails from, yet still holds the stories written within its roots. Imagine a black rose grown in concrete, singing songs of gardens planted by loving hands, songs of forests grown from forest fire, whose branches sway to a different kind of wind. Songs of freedom, or at least the idea of it. You see, your elders can only teach you ideologies. It is up to us to embody them, for what are we, if not the embodiment of their will to survive the tribulations of concrete jungles? So yes, I may know nothing of the tragic history pouring from the necks of brown paper bags into the cracks of your pavement, but still, I could tell you stories of war and bloodshed in my savannas, which is to say, to be African in America is to know neither the streets nor the words, yet somehow still be seen as the product of both. It's to be a chained man claiming equality, a slave never captured, you're never given the chance to be free. This is the art of living another man's struggle. Taking a taste, then learning to call that struggle home. It's the same way you make beauty savage. You strip royalty from Kunta Kinte's skin while memorizing Toby's assimilation speech, which is to say, growing up has been a lesson in trading in accented tongue for acceptance in silence, and finding new ways to whitewash my heritage, just so it's easier to drown in America's melting pot, become the world's impoverished dog, kick twice every time it's fed. And it's funny how y'all still don't realize that your 10 cents a day can't absolve you from reaping the fruits of our colonization. But don't worry, for we no longer need a savior, because we are the children who found salvation within the lands we call home. So don't ask me where I'm from, I'll tell you all the places I've lived, but don't claim, just ask me where my home is. I'll tell you home is a country off the coast of a continent, mistaken for a country. Home is the sweet sounds of laughter, melodized by the clinking of pots of pans in my grandmother's kitchen in Yaoundé, which is to say, to be African in America is to know that homesick can look like the house you were raised in. Is to hear Cameroon call my name, beckoning me in a different dialect. It's watching as my ears make dead language of generational wisdom. It's days like this, when my country's flag can't save me from bastardizing my identity, when I feel too young to miss the taste of love and home in my mother's cooking, when sorrow reminds me that ancestry is just another name for the parts of ourselves that refuse to assimilate. These are the days I find myself reciting love poems to the wind, praying one day my heart will find its way back to Africa. One day, a weary soul will find its way back home.
Thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you so much to Champagne, to Kerry, and to Daryl for your stirring words and for your honesty and vulnerability. as the daughter of a Mexican immigrant who came here illegally, hearing these young voices from all these different places telling their truth, that's what Humanities Washington is all about. I'd also like to tell you a little bit about some of the experiences I have had as a Humanities Washington speaker through our Speakers Bureau. Two that come to mind right away is I did a workshop at the Kent Library. My workshops are around performance studies and communication skills and public speaking. And a woman said to me, she was an older woman, not a native English speaker. She said, "This is my social life. I go home, I go to sleep, I wake up, I go to work, I come back home. But every once in a while, I come to an event at the library." And that meant so much to me because our libraries are becoming the social safety net for so many people. Whether it's homeless people looking for a place to be during the day, folks looking for a place to charge their phone, or folks who feel disconnected from their community and want for some fleeting moments to come to a program hosted by Humanities Washington and sit in a room with other people and feel connection. Another moment, this happened in Renton at another library. My workshop, I get people to get up and practice some of their public speaking skills and to really think about what they already do well as a communicator. And this one gentleman came up to me and he said, at the beginning of this workshop, I had no intention of applying for this new position at my work, which would be a promotion. But now after this workshop, I realize I can. I have what it takes to apply and to do the interview. And that meant so much to me, that's what Humanities Washington can do, not just inform, but inspire and help people not just look out, but look in. So tonight, I'm asking you to help Humanities Washington continue to build an informed and compassionate community. The donation information is on your screen. So simply text Humanities to 41444. Go to humanitieswashington.org/bedtime stories 2020 or give us a call. Your gift will support Humanities Washington programming. Can you give $5,000? Thank you, Judy and Jay Rich. And thank you, Michael Bauer, for your gift at this level. How about $2,500? Thank you to Cynthia Wells and Tim Kerr, Carly Schiffner, and Tammy Miller for your gifts at this level. Maybe $1,000 is just right. Thank you, Jeff Feldman, and thank you, Jeff Kunis. $500? Thanks, Allison Campbell. Thank you, Bruce Gallagher. How about $250? Thank you, Sharon Merrigan. Thank you, Debbie McLaughlin. Every gift is so important to our work. $100, $50, even $25 will support programs that bring people together. Let's take a look at how we're doing. Okay, so as you can see on our thermometer, we are more than halfway there. Every little bit counts. So please donate whatever you feel comfortable donating and help us move the thermometer up. This is the one thermometer in the time of a pandemic that I would like to keep going up and up and up. So it's really great that we see this, and I want to look at all the lovely scrolling names and watch our donations come through. This is just so exciting. So thank you to everyone who's donated, and to those of you who are thinking about it, please do. Anything helps. Any small donation helps. So you have plenty of time to complete your donation as we make our way over to hear from Charles Johnson. Many of you have heard Charles live, either at Bedtime Stories or at another of his readings. Charles is a novelist, essayist, literary scholar, philosopher, cartoonist, screenwriter, and professor emeritus at the University of Washington in Seattle, where I am earning my PhD. So all my favorite scholarly institutions are being represented tonight. A MacArthur Fellow, his fiction includes Nighthawks, Dr. King's Refrigerator, Dreamers, Faith and the Good Thing, and Middle Passage, for which he won the National Book Award. In 2002, he received the Arts and Letters Award in Literature from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. Charles was among the group that developed the bedtime stories concept, and this is his 21st year of writing for the event. I'm sure he will never forget this particular bedtime stories. So tonight, he will read Night Shift.
You go to work at the hospital at 10 p.m. as you always do, but you're feeling like a lot of people who don't want to leave home during the pandemic. Doctors and nurses, healthcare providers, people in grocery stores, teachers, and security guards like you. You all are supposed to be essential workers. The people on the front lines every day and night, because certain goods and services couldn't end without society collapsing entirely. Although some days it seems to you at this dangerous hour in history, when Americans are killing and tearing each other apart, that this sea change has happened already. As a young Black man, you were, of course, always at risk from the moment you were born. But even that abnormal wasn't normal anymore. After months of the worst pandemic in a century, you've witnessed the devastating toll it's taking on the doctors and hospital staff all around you. It's like they're fighting a war with never enough supplies, or a battle they feel they lose every time someone on a ventilator dies, which is daily, or when one of their co-workers contemplates suicide or collapses on the floor right in front of them from fatigue. On top of that, there was always the danger of being contaminated by this devilish, mutating, poorly understood, highly politicized plague themselves and bringing it back home to their spouses, children, or aging parents. That isn't something you have to worry about. You're 25, but you figure you don't have a family. Not really. Not since your mother died 15 years ago, right here in this hospital after a surgery she was too weak to recover from. That left your older brother Jamal and you to somehow cross America's racial minefield of dangers on your own. And you don't talk. You don't want to think about him being family. You've been practicing social distancing with him since the days he started carrying a gun, selling drugs, and running with a gang called the Cobras when you were still in your teens. You didn't like them. The Cobras used to beat you up before Jamal was jumped into that gang. Him being a Cobra and so angry and cynical and fighting all the time, always opinionated and pissed off, broke your mother's heart. And you never knew your father. He just wasn't around. Your mother had tried her best to put you both on the right path. Blackness, she said, was not a curse or a condemnation. But you had to be careful in a society structured by an infinite number of ways for its citizens to fail, to make mistakes, blunders, or be defined as criminals, wrong in some way, or involved in something illegal. She always told you to strive to be more, to be better, to just be human, and to see obstacles as opportunities, to stand for something, she said, because if you don't stand for something, it's likely you'll fall for anything. So, you always tried to do better, to avoid the landmines that Jamal stepped on. Like him, you didn't finish high school, but you earned your GED, and you quietly do your best on your job here at the hospital. You didn't want to become a casualty or just another statistic. You were wired, you felt differently from him, and feared if you tried to help your brother, he might drag you down with him. You haven't seen him in what? Maybe 10 years? And that was all right. You learned you could do just fine by yourself. if need be. You try to read as much and as widely as you can. And sometimes you take online courses, even though your budget on a security guard's salary gets too tight sometimes. And ever so often, you get behind on your bills. Before walking into the hospital, you loop your plain black cloth mask over your ears, then push through the doors leading to the emergency waiting room, which is near the corridor that leads to the locker room for those who work security. As soon as you step inside, you know something is wrong. One of the other security guards, Jim Sawyer, always stands inside the entrance at this hour, taking note of everyone who comes in or leaves, but not tonight. And then you hear a smear of loud voices in the waiting room. A dozen angry young people, bloodied, bandaged, and moaning, scarred and scared, wounded and willful, some dressed entirely in black, are demanding medical attention. Behind them, you see the receptionist, Kamisha Thompson, who you like, and maybe more than like, because she's always good-natured, she's always kind, has a beautiful bow-shaped smile that lights up her eyes behind her glasses, never burdens anyone with her personal baggage, and will listen as long as you want to keep talking. But tonight, she seems overwhelmed when you squeeze through this rowdy, unruly crowd, none of them wearing masks or social distancing, and you ask her what all this is about. She's wearing a white mask sprinkled with red hearts. That makes you smile because it so fits her personality. It keeps sliding up toward her nose, and ever so often she has to tug it back down toward her chin with her thumb and forefinger. Through the cloth, you hear her say, "There was a protest downtown. Don't ask me about what they were protesting this time. I don't remember. But when it got dark, some people started looting. Some attacked the police. One cop was shot, and they took him to Harborview. Lucas," her voice, tremulous, sounds exhausted, "we're really short-handed tonight. The doctors are doing triage. Right now, we don't have enough ventilators or beds. 5 of the security guards, one of them was Jim, tested positive for COVID when they showed up for work, and they have been quarantined at home. Your supervisor has been trying to reach you all day, but he kept getting a message that service to your phone was disconnected." You nod slowly. That was one of the bills you fell behind on. You can tell this was going to be a very long night. What you don't know yet is that it might be your last night. "Okay," you say, "I'll come back to take Jim's place as soon as I can." Kamisha holds up one hand covered by a blue vinyl glove. Above her mask, you can see her gentle eyes, dark brown pupils like chocolate drops, and pencil-thin eyebrows, but not her high cheekbones. Her silvery voice floats disembodied in the air. "No," she says. "No, one of the doctors, Dr. Chin, said they need someone right now in the recovery room in the East Wing. That's where security is needed. You need to go there now. Are you going to be okay here? By yourself?" Her eyes crinkled. "I'll do my best. You go find Dr. Chin." You hurry into the empty locker room, thinking of all the duties that awaited you at a hospital that was short-handed and under siege. You change into your gray, short-sleeved shirt, dark pants with gray stripes on the side, and strap on your duty belt with its keys, flashlight, radio, and a slot to hold your smartphone. Then you pull on your turquoise latex gloves. But your mind is still chewing on what Kamisha told you. If the security staff was down 5 people tonight, who was going to do a floor-by-floor check of all the buildings every 2 hours? Who would be checking windows and doors? Who would make sure the security systems were functioning properly? You wonder, can anything good come out of this ongoing catastrophe? Dr. Chin, wearing a blood-splattered surgical gown, is waiting impatiently outside the recovery room when you arrive. You approach him cautiously because he always carries himself as if he's posing for a photo. Tonight, though, you can tell he's sacked and empty, running on the fumes. You place his age at 60, maybe 65. For as long as you've known him, he's always been a perfectionist, in an imperfect world, a physician strict about the right nutrition for his patients and the staff at the hospital, and he never trusts himself even to talk when he's tired, like now. When feeling numb after seeing 10 patients die in a day from the virus, he balances his depleted energy by slowing down, breathing deeply, being ever more precise and mindful of even the minutest details, doing things Tai Chi style, as he calls it, for his father taught him the 22-move Yang-style form when he was a boy. His motions as he waits for you are as slow as those of a man submerged in water. Each posture or position he takes as he shifts his weight outside the recovery room, flowing like the unconscious grace of actors in a Chinese opera. You wonder, for the briefest of moments, what it would have been like to grow up with a wealthy, well-educated doctor as your father, someone teaching you survival skills that would stay with you for a lifetime. I just removed a bullet from the shoulder of a man in that room, he says. I need you to call the police and keep him here until they arrive. Yes, you think. That is the hospital's rule when someone comes in after being shot. You've had to call the police before to inform them about a shooting victim. Dr. Chin turns away, moving toward his next patient, and you step into the recovery room as if into a dream. The lights are dim, so you squint to sharpen your vision, the room gradually snapping into shape, your gaze finally falling on a figure in a bed with chrome knobs and a metal railing. Stepping closer, as he tries to lift his head to look at you, your heart is fluttering in your chest. Your palms feel wet, as if your life is doubling back on you like a Mobius strip. Because, of course, you know who this is, who it has to be in a country coming apart at its seams. This is the night that was bound to come. You find yourself standing speechless over this wounded man, wounded tonight, wounded so badly earlier in your lives. He recognizes you. You wish you could say the same for him. 10 years have passed since you last saw him, and he is a mystery to you, looking as if he's aged 2 decades. He stumbled into so many racial minefields. He's been blown to pieces often, and now he's hooked up to IV tubes, wearing a polyester patient gown, and still groggy from his pre-surgery injection of midazolam. An angry Saturday night's knife scar stretches from just below his left eye down to his cheek to his chin. His skin is rough from the hard alcohol and drug-driven life he's been living with the Cobras. His voice is flinty, fractured every now and then by a chest-rattling cough. Can't stay here, he says weakly. Help me leave. You blink to refocus your eyes. It's been a long time since you've seen an OG, an original gangster. You say, you were shot. I don't understand what happened. You never will, he says, rolling his eyes. That was always your problem, Lucas. You never get angry enough. When them protesters started busting into stores, me and a couple of my boys decided to liberate a little merchandise, you know, for reparations. White people owe us everything. We're supposed to be dead. You know that, right? Some pig saw us. He shot at me and I shot back. I told my boys to bring me here. I keep tabs on my square younger brother. Knew you worked security here. So help me outside, okay? Jamal? You shot a cop? Yeah. He ain't the first. Probably won't be the last either. Cops? They're just another gang. You still running with the Cobras? That's right. They're my family. I thought we were family. He gives a shrug, the corners of his mouth pulled down. We were, but different, like Mom always said. All right? You gonna help me or not? I can't let you go. I'll lose my job. Right. Your little job. And I could go to prison. I'm on parole, man. They're looking for me. They'll put me under the jail. Now, I can't do no more time. Just get me outside. Let me hold that cell phone of yours, and I'll call the brothers to pick me up. After that, you'll never see me again. You leave a silence and lower your head, pinching the bridge of your nose. Here was a landmine your mother never told you that you would ever have to face. You imagine what might happen when the police catch up with him. Suicide by cop. Don't make me do this, you say. It's not right. It's crazy. In your condition, you won't get far. Let me worry about that, okay? My boys will pick me up. Little brother, he laughs, raising his eyebrows. Welcome to the real world. There ain't no right or wrong. You don't reply to that. Unlike Kamisha, he was never one to listen. For a second, you want to ask him what sent him to prison, but decide you really don't want to know. It doesn't matter. He's family, and you can't abandon family no matter what happens, despite your differences. And regardless of the risk to yourself, you know you cannot deny his request. For better or worse, good or ill, you are bonded by blood. He tries to rise from the bed. He can't do it alone. Before you can think, you're unhooking him from the IV tubes, lowering the railing on his bed, and helping him to stand. Moving slowly now, calmly, like Dr. Chen, focusing on each thing you do as if it will be the last thing you ever do. Awareness of death, you realize, makes every moment precious, a gift that must be managed carefully. Jamal holds on to you for support as you guide him to a wheelchair in a corner of the room, aware only of his pain and confusion, which somehow you accept, no matter how much you want him or this plague-racked world to be otherwise. From the recovery room is a short distance to one of the service elevators only used by the staff. That takes you down and spits you out at an exit at the back of the hospital. You hope your supervisor is too busy to be at the screens that monitor all the entrances leading outside. Jamal struggles out of the wheelchair, clumsy and Chaplin-esque. He bends over briefly from dizziness there on the loading dock. You give him a look that says, "Go." And he smiles, barefoot and wraith-like in his gown, before limping off into the darkness. As you watch him disappear, a sadness washes over you as you surrender to the certainty that your life will always be interwoven with your brother's, contaminated by him, just as one day you likely will be infected by a virus so difficult to control. But unlike him, you know you'll survive all this as you did the racial minefields of your childhood and move on with your life. You walk back into the hospital to check on Kamisha and call 911.
Thank you, Charles, so much for that marvelously complex tribute to a frontline worker working the night shift. Before we go, we want to check our thermometer and see where we're at as our program comes to an end. So right now we are at 76,822. We are getting close to our $100,000 mark. So please give anything that you can. Any donation makes a difference. As the program ends, there is still time to make a donation. Text GO. You can text GO to the website and give a call. We truly appreciate any and every gift. And we want you to know that we really appreciate you being here tonight, that as this evening ends, we hope you enjoyed the stories that you heard and that you learned a little bit more about the importance of the humanities. Especially right now, think of the podcasts you listen to, the movies you're watching, the Netflix series you're binging, the books you're reading. These are the humanities, stories that put the human experience in the center. So we look forward to seeing you in person as soon as we are able to get together as a group again. In the meantime, please take advantage of our terrific lineup of speakers who are virtually engaging audiences now and in the months ahead. I myself will be doing a workshop at the Anacortes Library on November 4th. It's called Always On, how to turn up the volume on everyday speech. And you don't even have to go to Anacortes, even though it's lovely there. You can join us online. In mid-October, we'll be kicking off our latest series, What These Times Mean, Navigating 2020. These live stream events will cover a variety of current topics like the effects of the coronavirus on personal and professional lives, as well as the upcoming election and issues of race and culture. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter for details on these events and other happenings. You can also find a full calendar at humanities.org/events. So thank you again. Please, you still have time to text, call, or go to our website. Thank you so much for joining us. Good night and sweet dreams.